Okay, if I can have everyone's attention. Can I have everyone's attention? On behalf of the Tarrant County Libertarian Party, welcome to Cowtown. Without any further ado, here's our moderator, Mr. Ed Kless. Woo!
It is better to debate without settling it than to settle a question without debating it.
Amen.
That's from a French essayist and moralist, Joseph Joubert, who we invoke tonight. Welcome to the Libertarian Party of Texas State Convention Senate debate. We have 6 candidates tonight. We have a uniquely, I think, libertarian format, which I will briefly describe for you. Each candidate of the 6 will be given 2 minutes for an introduction, followed by each candidate asking a 30-second question of the other 5 candidates. And that will proceed on down the line, starting in the first position here with Mr. Roland on down. Then each candidate will be given 2 minutes by way of wrap-up, and that will end our first round. During the wrap-up procedure, I will be handing out these temporary debate ballots, passing them along. If you are a delegate, we're on the honor system here tonight, folks, okay? If you're a delegate, please mark 2 marks on the page for people that you want to see continue into the next round. Now, you can vote for none of the above twice, if you like, and none of the above is on here. Or you can vote for one candidate twice as well, okay? The top 2 vote getters, regardless of percentages, the top 2 vote getters will continue on into the next round, whereby we will finish up with questions from the floor. So please, we will get questions from you at that point, and I'll remind you of the rules at that point. At the end, there will be a 3-minute closing from the final 2 candidates who remain on stage. Candidates, any questions before we begin? Yes, Scott?
Are we asking one question to all 5 of the others?
Your question will be answered by the other 5 candidates.
Or do I get to take a specific question to each one of them?
No, just one question.
That would be the extended debate later.
That's correct. One question
Gotcha.
that each of the other 5 will answer. That's correct.
All right, thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Got it.
Candidates, everybody good with that? Okay, terrific. Well, let us begin. We will proceed starting with the first position. We drew lots for position. Mr. Roland will begin speaking in his opening first, his 2-minute opening, and then we'll proceed on down the line. We'll then come back, and Mr. Butler, who is in the second position, will ask the first question, and then we'll continue to move on down the line that way. Okay? All right. Mr. Roland, 2 minutes.
Good evening. Thank you, everyone, for organizing this event and for attending. I hope you have some good questions ready for us. For more than 75 years, the American people have allowed themselves to be led by people who promised much, who pretended to know what they were doing. And now, as we are confronting the possibility, the likelihood indeed, of the entire global economy falling into an abyss, they're beginning to realize that our leaders really don't know what they're doing. Almost every evening you can see a talking head on the subject of the economic crisis or the various other crises that we're facing. And if you read between the lines, you soon come to realize they don't have any solutions. The people are calling out for solutions. They don't understand, they don't know who to trust, they're freaked, as well they should be. The Republicans and the Democrats are not providing solutions. They're talking about values, they're talking about the old shibboleths, things that might sound good in a soundbite, but just don't get the job done. What I try to do at my website, johnroland.net, is to compile a very large, it would seem, although not as large as it will be before this year is over, of specific proposals, specific bills that are ready to drop in the hopper. And I invite everyone to feel free to borrow those as they wish.
Mr. Butler?
Thank you so much for having me here in wonderful Fort Worth. First, I would like to say that I'm running for the U.S. Senate to restore the American dream. An opportunity for every American to take care of their family with dignity and peace at home and abroad. I see 3 steps to restore the American dream. The first is to reform our economy. We have a Federal Reserve System currently in place that meets in secret, that prints as much money as it wants, and gives that money to its friends on Wall Street. This is a silent tax because most people don't know why their gas and food prices go up, and we must get rid of it immediately. Second, on the reforming the economy, is our problem with taxes and spending. For 113 years, the United States existed without an income tax. During this time, our country was funded primarily through tariffs on foreign goods entering the United States. Now, while all taxation has negative effects, tariffs cause the least distortion, are the least expensive to collect, and are the least personally invasive to our person. The income tax should be repealed immediately and replaced with nothing. Our national debt is currently over $14 trillion, with government spending nearly $2 trillion per year more than it collects. The American people should not have to pay for Washington's reckless and out-of-control appetite for debt. Secondly, in step 2, restoring dignity and peace at home, I would say that it is a laudable and praiseworthy goal to protect others. It is, in fact, the only just use of taxation. And I will speak more on that issue as my time is running out. Thank you so much for having me.
Dr. Ragu?
My name is Dr. S. Gopal, Raju, not Rahu. It's a good Rahu. It's a Mexican word. I don't deny it, but it's okay. I cut down my name to silver, gold, and ruby. So you get all 3 if I become the senator from this Texas LP on November 6th. Not only today, but on So I thank you all. What this problem is in our country is facing debt, 16 trillion, not 15 trillion. That was 2 months ago. Today is 16 trillion. So we can clear that one by so many ways. It's all listed in the, and also some of the, in my literature there on the black and white. So it's already listed there, and I am reborn or returned from heaven. 10 years ago, I was in coma for 60 days with open heart surgery. I revived that and I came back to earth on July 4th. Can you imagine that? I am still want to do the best for America. Everywhere, everybody should have better health insurance, no matter what his status is. Just like visitors getting health insurance at their cost, so anybody can buy the insurance at different levels. That's my first priority is, once again, insurance for all, irrespective of their status in this country. Ask not what Dr. SGR can do for you, for your health care, what you can do for me tonight to become the next senator candidate from Texas and next senator from the Texas senator on November 6th. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Huffman?
Yes, my name is Wayne Huffman, and the first thing you should know about me is that I hold no truths to be self-evident, which means that everything is open for discussion and for critical consideration. That doesn't mean that we necessarily have to grope for a solution, but what we do is we look and see what works, and then we develop solutions by the process of thesis, antithesis, synthesis. That is basically sort of how things have developed. Darwinism it comes from that, and what we get in the current thing is gamesmanship, which is basically Darwinism on steroids. So my approach is to try to deal with the whole problem, including the problems, are to take positions that also address the problems that are raised by the opposition, so that come out with practical solutions. So I'm basically a person who looks for consensus, but would like to press an agenda for freedom in the process of doing so. The items that I feel are most important at the current time are the invasion of privacy that is posed by the Patriot Act, an area that is most of concern to me is the simplification of government and the simplification of contracts. So many contracts that we see today are too complex to deal with. So basically, my approach is to seek consensus. Thank you.
Mr. Jameson.
Hello, thank you for the opportunity to come before you this evening and speak. I come here with a mixture of humility and rage, which maybe sound a little strange. I'm humbled to be here to help the party and to be your candidate if you choose me tomorrow. And I have an inherent rage against the machine. I'm the kind of person that writes letters to government and tells them why they're not doing it right. I call them on the phone and tell them why they're not doing it right. And when I hear back that Texas doesn't adhere to the Help America Vote Act because they have applied for a waiver and been given a waiver through 2012, and this is years ago, and now it's 2012 and Texas still has a waiver. So, but that's the kind of person I am at the grassroots level. I like to protest the man with paperwork and with my feet, of course. When I heard Harry Brown speak on TV in 2000, that's when I discovered the Libertarian Party, and I joined it as soon as I could. Before that, I was completely politically disenfranchised. I had never voted before the year 2000. I just didn't have a home. And when I heard him speak, I thought it was absolutely brilliant. And his vision of America is this beautiful, free state. He writes that up in his book. It's the Great Libertarian Offer, and it's a brilliant work. It's genius. And he talks about how we can have a society where we're free of the federal income tax. We don't have Social Security tax, but we don't forsake the elderly. It seems like an oxymoron. We end the war on drugs. We end our foreign wars. We end our foreign handouts. Do we need Ben Bernanke wiring $1 trillion overnight to Europe while we're debating TARP in the U.S. Senate, saying, "Oh my gosh, should we give these banks $100 billion?" Oh no, Ben Bernanke's over there at his terminal saying, "Transaction authorized." It seems a little creepy, and so that's not the kind of government I support. That's just wrong. So I'd like to think of myself as a Harry Brown libertarian that carries forward his values and his principles. I may never be as good as him, but I'd like to aspire to be that kind of person, that kind of politician. And if you let me, I would like to run an active campaign, and I have raised about $4,000 so far for today.
Mr. Myers.
Hi guys, I'm John J. Myers. I was the Dallas County Vice Chair. I was on the Texas Executive Committee, and I was recently elected to the Libertarian National Party. I am a businessman in North Texas here. I own two different businesses. One is a screen printing shop called Clear Sky 24. The other is a restaurant called The Free Man, and The Free Man is in Deep Ellum. I employ about 34 people, and opening both of these businesses has led to me to honestly see how government on the local, state, and federal level can interfere with businesses in many ways, including $800 if you want people to be able to dance on your dance floor. I have a lovely wife named Shanine, and I have two daughters. One is Ella and one is Dagny. And I like to think that I'm going to teach Ella and Dagny how to live with personal responsibility in their life, and also how to be generous, but of themselves. It's not government's job to be generous. It's my job to be generous. A lot of people think that libertarians are extreme. I don't think that's true. I come here to say that I am not an extreme person. I do not believe it's extreme to believe that we shouldn't be around the world policing everybody. I don't believe it's extreme to think that we shouldn't have the NDAA. I don't think it's extreme to think that our president should not be able to kill people. I don't think it's extreme to think that we should not have indefinite detention even though our Constitution forbids it. I don't think it's extreme to think that even though the 1st, 2nd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th Amendment, only the one about not housing soldiers, has been trampled by our current government. I don't think that's extreme at all. I don't think it's extreme to think we shouldn't have given $23 trillion to the banks prior to a recession. I don't think it's extreme to think the bailouts, the stimulus, and even the Federal Reserve should have ever existed at all. And I don't believe it's extreme that, I believe it's extreme when the government tells you what you can eat, what you can drink, who you can marry, and what you can smoke. Ladies and gentlemen, that sounds like common sense. That sounds like common sense to me. Does that sound like common sense to you?
Amen.
All right, well, I'm not extreme, our government is.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Returning back up here, Mr. Butler, you have the privilege of asking the first question of your other candidates. You have 30 seconds to ask your question. They will have 1 minute to respond, starting with Dr. Ragu.
Sure. What do you see as the biggest challenge in your campaign, and how do you hope to overcome it?
The biggest challenge, once again, the lack of health insurance for all. That's most important because being a surgeon, I worked almost free for most of the uninsured throughout my 35 years of surgical practice. I became a victim of surgery myself. So this is the reason we can do everybody in this country, irrespective of their status, they can have the health insurance of their choice without eliminating anybody. I can do that one in 3 steps, I can 4 steps. Everybody should have insurance. The next one is debt-free. 16 trillion is not a small amount. We have to make responsible for all the congressmen and the senators who borrowed, let them pay back the money to the debt-free community, debt-free US. Thank you.
Yes, I guess the biggest challenge I see to my campaign is getting the word out to the people. And I view the Libertarian Party really as a party of ideas more than as a party of governance. And so my feeling is we have to get libertarian principles out to as many people as possible. And I think the most effective way of doing that is through media contacts, perhaps working with people who have websites and that sort of thing that obviously I or any of the other candidates are not going to have nearly the resources that the major candidates do. And so therefore we need to talk to the people who are in a position to influence other people.
Mr. Jameson.
Well, of course, relevancy is critical. And I don't direct this comment just at one particular of my opposition, but I looked at Dr. Ray's websites last night, and it's kind of a mess. I mean, I couldn't find one for Mr. Huffman. The doctor's was just very random to me. I didn't understand it. Robert Butler's didn't mention that he's running for U.S. Senate at all. It was a very informative website. John Roland's came up not displayed. And I'm not saying I win on the internet, but it seems as though if you're fighting for relevancy to people outside this room, we have the internet as a resource, for example, and that should be something that, if not today, soon should be in place. I would pledge to you, I mentioned the last sentence at the bell, I have money for my campaign now, today, that I would send every delegate a U.S. Jameson for Senate starter kit within 2 weeks of the convention. So I can get you all yard signs and stickers without whether or not you give to my campaign or not.
I think the main problem that any libertarian candidate faces is going to be funds. And the only way to raise funds is get people to believe in you and believe in your message. The good news is we have a great message. The bad news is we haven't always been able to get out there and put it out in the way that we should. The good news, on the other hand, though, is we just saw Ron Paul who's able to get his message out. And when he was, 4 years ago, Ron Paul was kind of like, who? 2% of the population even knew who he was. And then by getting his message out and standing by his principles, he was able to then generate publicity and popularity among a grassroots coalition. And that grassroots coalition grew and gave him money to the point where he couldn't be ignored. It is my hope that with this campaign that we will get out there, get our message out there, enough people will recognize that I am the only choice for U.S. Senator against Dewhurst and the Democrat. And that I am the only choice they really have. Just like Gary Johnson is the only choice we have between Obama and Romney.
Mr. Roland.
The single challenge I'll be focusing on will be getting into candidate debates with the Republican and the Democrat candidates. If Ted Cruz is the Republican nominee, then I would expect us to have a series of excellent candidate forums, because knowing Ted as I do, I'm sure he would be quite willing to participate. On the other hand, if Dewhurst is the nominee, the chances are he's going to refuse to participate, trying to ride on his Republican support. And it will be difficult to get many sponsors of such events to host an event if only the Libertarian and the Democrat show up. But it can be done, and I have ways that may be able to work to do that.
Great, thank you. Dr. Ragu, you have now 30 seconds to ask your question.
My question is, how do you prevent fraud in the medical, Medicare and Medicaid and other insurance companies? There's so much fraud, $67 billion last year, and then since 65, there are $1,300,400 trillion loss of Medicare fraud. Please answer, how do you prevent that?
Well, I think the best way to prevent fraud is to do a much better job of monitoring. It just amazes me when I see some of the scams that go on in the medical industry, and I can't believe that the word hasn't gotten to the regulators that these scams are going on, and yet they go on for years and years. So obviously monitoring is one of the best ways of doing it. Of course, the other way is to have a good competitive industry where the companies who are in the industry for their own benefit will monitor what is going on as far as payments are concerned, because it's going to affect their bottom line.
I suppose it's my turn, if we're going down the line. Lord rest my soul for having the time as I recover from my foot injury to read Obamacare law, which I did. I fell asleep dozens of times. And of course, most of the law, 99% of it is completely absurd. It sets up this massive government bureaucracy of help centers and counseling sessions and walking you through your policy options and state options to get out. It's pure insanity. I mean, it just, and if you're Native American Indian, there's an exception. If you're out of the country, when you need to make a health insurance claim to get to what is it, Skynet? I'm almost finished making my connection to Skynet. Oh, I mean, the giant, massive computer in the sky that monitors every health transaction, every financial transaction, and everything you do all day long to make sure that it complies with the rules. It's like, no, thank you. I'm not interested in that. I'm not interested in that scene at all. The only saving redemption of the Obamacare Act is that it requires greater financial disclosure from health insurance agencies of the profits and loss and payouts ratios. I do support that one paragraph of the 935 pages of insanity that I read. And I think that will help prevent some fraud.
I have a 100% way of preventing fraud in Medicare. To get rid of Medicare. I'm sure the doctor is not up on this, but we need to talk. In 1965, you paid out of your pocket the same amount of money that you pay now out of pocket when you have Medicare. So before Medicare, which was 1965, you'd walk into the doctor's office and you'd say, what ails you? And they'd say, well, it's going to cost you about $100. Well, that's fine. Here's your $100. And that was a transaction between the two of you. Just because certain people couldn't afford it, all of a sudden the government's got to do something about it. It must be the government. You know, and all the things that the government did, the entire bureaucracy that they created, every single step of the way, all they ended up doing was make it cost the same $100 that you pay as a deductible now. And that's adjusted for cost of inflation. That's from Harry Brown's book, if you want to look that up.
Medicare, Medicaid are examples of one of the kinds of problems that I have tried to develop a solution for and propose to build a deal with. It is often gets a good applause line to say, well, let's just end it abruptly. The problem is with most established programs, it's like putting your foot on the brake of a car traveling on ice. You can wind up going in the ditch. And people perceive that a sudden abrupt change would be disastrous. So any legislation that tries to do away with something like Medicare has to do it in an orderly process. Even though Medicare is unconstitutional, it's not a good idea to just cancel it. And what I've done is turn it into a research and development program and not a treatment program.
And Mr. Butler.
Well, as you probably would guess, I agree with the last three speakers that the best way to, well, there is no way to end fraud, so the best way to end it would be to end the programs. I also agree with Mr. Roland that we need to do this gradually. You know, it took 100 years for all of these programs to build up, and we need to have some time for people to make other arrangements when we unravel these plans. That's
Okay, thanks. Mr. Huffman, it's your turn to ask a question. So please, 30 seconds, and then Mr. Jameson, you're on answering next.
All right, my question is, what do you consider the proper military policy of the United States, and specifically address military intervention in places such as Vietnam, Afghanistan, and Iraq, and also address what you consider the proper use of drones?
Well, of course, drones are designed for taking pictures of crop circles, as far as I understand. They have no serious military application. 60% of our veterans come back from the current wars and make claims with the Veterans Administration and wait 2 years to hear back, and they each have an average of 3 conditions that they're complaining about on their application. And the Veterans Administration says that they operate without a budget, yet they're 2 years behind. They don't have the resources they need. And when asked how they get their money, they say, well, we asked the Federal Reserve and they cut us a check. And we come back when we're out of money. Like, what the hell is that? That's no budget at all. And then you don't have the resources. You have an unlimited checkbook, but you don't have the resources to do your job. Veterans claims should be processed in 30 days. That government needs to be lightning fast, not years down the road. 15 years to get immigration papers. I know women that have gotten married, divorced, and remarried and had new families in 15 years. You know, it's like, but they're still here and they don't know, they haven't heard back from the immigration about their status. So we need a government that's fast, and we need to get out of the wars, and we need to bring people home, and we need to process veterans' claims.
I wish I had 3 hours on this topic. Let me tell you, who declares war? That's right. All right, and then who declared war on Pakistan? Our drones right now are launching missiles into Pakistan. Does anybody remember us declaring war on Pakistan?
I thought it was the UN.
Our drones are launching missiles into Pakistan.
Wait, where are the drones?
And the point of it is we're doing this all around the world. We're actually, it would be I would honestly believe, I cannot not believe that we're not involved in Syria. I know we got involved in Libya. I know we're involved in Tunisia. And all these things, we're basically setting people up around the world. And when we sit here at home, when Americans sit at home and they say, oh, well, we must be doing the right thing, but we don't investigate enough. And then we wonder, well, what happened to this country? I don't understand why these people hate us. Because they obviously don't hate us because we're free. These people hate us because we're in their countries, we're stealing their resources, we're taking their stuff. We're trying to force democracy to them through the barrel of a gun by people who don't even speak their language. When you talk about what are we going to do in Africa, about Coney, are you kidding me? There's people in Africa that want to deal with Coney. Why would it be us? They don't trust us.
I have the distinction of having served as an officer in the United States Air Force. So I gained some insight into the military problems of our country. This was during the Vietnam era. The need for preparedness needs to be understood and not conflated with aggressive activities. And there are a lot of things that people who criticize military spending don't understand, such as the fact that it is often cheaper to keep our troops abroad than to keep them in the United States. The issues involved are quite complex, and they need to be understood in their full complexity.
Okay.
Providing a strong national defense is the single most important obligation the Constitution entrusts to the federal government. We need a strong and effective military to protect life, liberty, and property of our citizens. Today, however, we have hundreds of thousands of fighting men and women stretched thinly across the globe in over 135 countries, often without a clear mission, without a definition of victory, or even without the knowledge of when they'll be reunited with their families. Acting as the world's policeman and nation building weakens our country, puts our troops in harm's way, and spends precious resources in other nations in the midst of a historic economic crisis. Taxpayers are forced to spend billions of dollars each year to protect the borders of other countries while Washington refuses to deal with our own border security needs. We need to spend more time and energy focused here at home and promoting peace abroad rather than war.
Okay, as a doctor, as a surgeon, I work in all veterans hospitals, state hospitals, private practice, solo practice, group practice. So there is a problem here in this country because we are going after other countries, engaging in war, helping the other countries. That should not be. All the wars right now going on should be stopped today, not tomorrow. It's costing billions of dollars every day, every month, every trillions. Last 1 year itself, costing the. So I am against all. When the veterans come home, most of them have PTSD, that is, and homeless and hunger. So these all should be because of they engage in the long distance war, thousands of miles away from their home. So that's the reason we have to stop the war right now, not tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. Jameson, your turn to ask a question.
Thank you so much. I'm going to allow myself a multi-part question, which you can answer in its entirety or answer one part if you like. How do you guys feel about a 40% federal budget cut? I've done my Ross Perot pie charts at my house in my own time, and it looks like that's about the minimum that's needed. You know, our governor is calling for 10% budget reduction for Texas. I think 40% was appropriate for the federal government based on my calculations. And then also, do you feel that true libertarians should vote for non-libertarian candidates? A lot of people get very excited about Ron Paul. And then lastly, what about there's two bills in the Senate. There's one that's the Paycheck Fairness Act, and there's also the Love Bombs by the President Act. If you have an opinion on either one of those, I appreciate it.
Well, yeah, obviously, I would see a 40% budget cut being at least a nice start. I mean, and it would certainly, I wouldn't be sitting at this table if I didn't believe that we need much more than a 40% budget cut. I mean, we American people really need to wake up to where we're going. This ship is sinking. And if we don't do something about it, a lot, you know, as severe as at least that, I don't know what else we're going to do. True libertarian candidates, I actually have a problem with this. I am a Libertarian. I fully support the party. I only donate to Libertarian candidates. I don't vote for Republican primaries. But I support any person that's working towards liberty for real. And there are people that do that. One of the things, when I went elected to Senate, I would, now we'll go into this a little bit later. I'm out of time.
Thank you, Mr. Roland.
The budget issue is a little more complicated than just cutting. But if you go to my website, you'll find my proposed budget is a zero-based budget, which also introduces a procedure that members of Congress have to vote on each additional amendment that adds more than a certain amount of money to the budget as a separate recorded vote. The idea is to introduce a procedure that confronts Congress with the need to not just give the job to a committee, but to be responsible for building the budget item by item. And of course, it takes 40% just to balance the budget, much less pay down our debt.
Thank you, Mr. Butler.
Yes. I touched on this earlier, so I'll touch on it again. I believe that peaceful change happens slowly and gradually. And so what I would like to see is a 10% reduction in the size of the federal government at each congressional cycle every 2 years. And I would like to see that happen first with unconstitutional departments of government such as the TSA, the IRS, and among others. Now I'd like to spend the rest of my time on that second question because I think it's really important that you guys understand what my thoughts on this. The progressive movement in the early 1900s, their progressive party did not win very many elections. I think the most they ever won was 10% in Congress. But the progressive movement's goals were adopted. Almost 90% of their goals have been adopted. The Libertarian Party needs to pursue this too. Progressives were both in the Republican and the Democratic Party, infiltrated the highest levels of government. Libertarian Party needs to do the same thing.
Okay, my answer to this is stop borrowing as of tomorrow. For many other countries like China, India, England, Australia, you name it, all the other countries are lending them money for us. There's too much to carry on my shoulder and your shoulder. The only thing is we have to make responsible the congressmen and senators who borrowed the money, let them pay the money, let them stop taking their salaries, then let's clear the debt first as much as possible, then cut 10% every year till the debt is gone forever. Maybe it can be done in 5 years or it can be 6 years. So why should we not stop borrowing tomorrow from other countries? That's it.
My answer is obviously a 40% reduction in the government would cause chaos in the country. Now, that's not to say that we can't aim for a goal to reduce the cost of government, it's a very significant cost of government. But I think basically anyone who looks at the reality of politics and the current needs of the country is going to say that is a totally unworkable solution in the short term. We can set major goals for the future. Now, as far as backing other candidates, I think that's a good idea. Basically, I think that if candidates in other parties espouse libertarian principles, that it would make sense for the libertarians to endorse those candidates so that the libertarian vote would not detract from those candidates. And
Okay, thank you. Mr. Myers, your question, and then we'll proceed on to Mr. Roland.
Did I get a chance to pollution question? I thought that was the format.
No.
Well, I didn't, I had closing remarks.
You have closing remarks. We will do closing
On
remarks.
the
Right now,
question,
it's Mr. Myers' turn to ask a question.
Okay, you say so.
We all agree, or maybe most of us agree, that the federal government is the largest polluter. The United States is actually the largest polluter on the planet. Our federal government. However, aside from that, how can a libertarian policy protect health where air and water are necessarily mixed?
Mr. Roland.
Well, first of all, it's not quite true that the federal government is the biggest polluter. It depends on how you count polluters. The greatest sources of pollution are agriculture, the use of automobiles, and power plants. So the federal government contributes to that in certain ways, important ways, but we have to face the fact that there is no constitutional authority for environmental regulation of the kind that we've seen. There may need to be a constitutional amendment to provide that authority. I have not proposed such an amendment, but I would not be able to support any legislation that did it in the absence of such an amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Butler.
The first thing that we need to understand about state and federal regulations is that they are written for the most part by the industries that they're seeking to be regulated. So when you ask an oil company to write the rules on how oil companies ought to work, just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And another thing to remember about regulations is that they put a buffer between the responsibility of the polluters and the people that get polluted. So for example, when there's an oil spill, BP is to blame in the Gulf of Mexico. BP says, well, we followed federal regulations. We didn't do anything wrong. And this is a defense that they use to try to mitigate their responsibility. Now that case may not be the best example, but it does happen quite often.
Can I have the, supposed to answer?
Yes, Mr. Rather.
Can I have the question, please, again? I forgot.
Well, basically, the real actual question is how would you enact a libertarian policy, or what would your libertarian policy be to protect health when air and water are necessarily mixed? Meaning when transport, should I rephrase it?
Yeah. Just leave it right there. Leave it right there.
Go for a reframe.
All right, well, when say, for instance, that the pollutants are going into the air and those pollutants actually come down at a whole different place where you're not able to say specifically who caused the pollution in what area.
Okay.
Well, there is no way I can answer all the questions, but there is a pollution, there is a need for farming, there is a need for water, there is a need for some dry land will be there. So it's hard to define what exactly one can do for all the things you ask for us. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Huffman.
I guess my approach to pollution is similar to my approach to just about any problem, and that is that what is necessary is to get all the parties to the table and everybody gain each other. Because basically that's what's going to happen after the legislation is passed. Everybody's going to go out and try to game it from one side or the other. And my feeling is what you want is the people from the industry and people who are the recipients of a problem should all sit down at the table and come up with a practical solution which has been gained by sophisticated people.
Well, they may or may not be sophisticated people. I just remember after the tragedy in the Gulf with the oil rig exploding, when the third U.S. Senator came on my TV and said, "We know that those guys regulating that industry have been smoking marijuana and womanizing and drinking Jack Daniels for 30 years now." And I'm like, well, Senator, you've known for 30 years. I'm like, okay, so my pledge to you if I'm elected your U.S. Senator is I won't be caught doing any of those three things. You know, but it's a tragedy, and the blowout preventer that was used on that oil well, it's supposed to be the deepest one in world history, was built in 1968 by a Texas company. The Dutch came over here and laughed at us and said, you still use blowout preventers that rely on batteries? So let's think. The problem is we have corrupt regulatory agencies. Gee, let's think what we might be able to do to fix that and for public interest. You know, I'm not a big government bureaucrat. I don't want a Skynet computer monitoring my health and my every other aspect of my life, but you know, perhaps the EPA could attempt to not be corrupt along with the petroleum industry regulators.
Mr. Roland, you are the final questioner, and then we'll proceed on to Mr. Butler.
Briefly explain the relation between fractional reserve banking, legal tender, and fiat currency, the problem they present, and what you would do about it.
I do only have 1 minute to cover the history of finances at work. For those who don't know, I think fractional reserve banking is the process whereby banks make loans based on a small percentage of security that they keep in the bank. So they basically they're creating money, so to speak. I want to say first of all that I'm not an expert on this issue, but one thing I would like to say about it is that I believe that we need to put the choice of what legal tender is back in the hands of the citizens. If we have regulations in place now that we cannot use gold and silver as currency if we choose to. So let's let people decide for themselves what is valuable as a way to trade goods. And if that's a greenback, if that's a handwritten note from Mr. Roland, if that's whatever it is they see fit, I believe that that's the best way to move us to a sound economy. Let's put choice back in currency.
I do not have much experience on currency or economy or something like that. If you got any more questions on my education, that is only surgery and medicine, I'll be glad to answer any of your questions a little later on. Thank you.
Well, my feeling towards banking is that the important thing is that the banks are handling their customers' money, then they need to be careful in the use of that. The banks have gotten in trouble in recent years because they have expanded into areas that are basically for their own account and have felt the consequences of that, and the whole economy has felt the consequences of that. So my feeling is that the important thing is that the bankers keep to their basic business of banking as long as they are dealing with the public.
Yes, I'll claim to be a monetary expert. Sure, I'll take the opposite approach as a doctor. Fools like Paul Krugman is still championing the Keynesian theories that government spending, ever-increasing government spending, and printing an unlimited amount of new money, quantitative easing, is how we grow the economy. I disagree with that completely. If John Maynard Keynes were still alive today, I'd put a hit out on that guy. That's so completely wrong. Fiat money by decree, that means Ben Bernanke sits there and makes it on his computer and sends it to whomever he likes. That's wrong. We have a bill pending the U.S. Congress, I believe, has passed the House. It's H.R. CON 207, and it's going to the U.S. Senate that would allow states to create their own currencies and take other forms of payment for taxes to the king. So I would support that. It may make a distant time from our glorious arrival. All of you are invited to Washington at my expense. for my victory party. It'll be the best one ever. It's on me, including your airfare. Don't ask me how I get the money.
All right, well, let me try to do this in 1 minute, and this is going to be tough. There's actually 3 things wrong with the Federal Reserve, and that's fractional reserve banking, open market operations, and the fact that they artificially control interest rates. And I'll go through each of those for the doctor's sake, so he'll have some of this the next time he's interviewed. The idea being, with fractional reserve banking, that is the idea that the banks don't have to back all the assets that they loan out. And right now it's set to 9, I believe, 9 times. They can loan out 9 times the amount of money that they put in. That's creating the amount of money out of thin air, and that's thinning the amount of money that's in your pocket or in your savings. Artificially controlling interest rates means that people are not going, if you artificially keep interest rates low, people are not going to save their money. You want people to save money because saving money is good for an economy and it's good for people. When people don't save money, they take out loans. That's good for banks and it's good for corporations, but it's not good for you. Open market operations is the idea that the Federal Reserve can buy any asset that it wants, and since it's a secret organization, you don't get to know what assets they are, so they can buy really crappy, toxic assets and keep them on their balance sheet, and you won't know what they purchased, but they'll just put it down as $1 trillion. That's what's wrong with the Federal Reserve.
Proceed to closing statements. Each of the candidates will now be given 2 minutes to close. We will start with Mr. Butler, go on down the line, and conclude with Mr. Roland. So, Mr. Butler, please.
Sure. First, I'd like to say again that we need to restore the American dream. And that dream is an opportunity for Americans to take care of their own families with dignity and peace at home and abroad. Wanted to mention briefly a particular issue that we worked on last year in the Texas legislature. I say we, it was myself and a few of the students at the University of Texas. If some of them are here tonight, I'll point them out to you. But we worked on a bill against the TSA, the Transportation Security Administration. Their goal is to ensure the freedom of movement for people and commerce. That's in quotes. They accomplished that goal by stopping people at airports to irradiate them and physically probe their bodies with illegal and unconstitutional searches. We fought hard to try to get rid of that ability in the state of Texas to give law enforcement in Texas the ability to arrest people for molesting others, including federal agents. Now, what I would like to say is that I believe that the best person to bring these issues to bear in this debate against Dewhurst, by the way, was the guy who killed our bill to end the TSA in Texas. I believe that John J. Myers would be the best person on this table to do that. So I'd like to endorse him 100%. I entered this race before he did. I did not know that he'd be running. Now that I know that he is, I support him 100%. And I would like to invite you tonight, if you support John J. Myers, if you support Pat Dixon for chair, at 10 p.m. we're having a party in room suite 815.
Hello, once again. My name is Dr. S. Gopal, Ragu. I'm the first naturalized citizen from India or from around the world to contest for United Senate seat to help the needy people of America. Their need is very important. The health insurance is the most fundamental right of every person on this earth and also in the USA. I will support for that. I'm ready to take up any other senatorial candidate tonight or November 6th about healthcare need. There's so many things we can do. There are 40 million have no insurance. 40 million homelessness is there. We have to clear all these things to cut down the crime. The crime is very high nowadays because of the hunger, homelessness, lack of health insurance. You provide all these things, the country will turn around. If you elect me today, I'll be the first, once again, natural citizen in the history of the United States Senate. On November 6th, I'll make Texas, half red, half gold. That is, gold is a part of our symbol of Libertarian Party. Now the total redness should be cut into half gold, half red. That's my theory, why I'm to become the next United Senator. This I'm married here, I got 3 children, all were born here, and 7 grandchildren. Indo-American family, Hindu-Christian family. There's no difference between any religion. I support all religions. I preach, I already made contact with many other states, including Oklahoma, Missouri, Illinois, and Indiana. And I wear different dresses, different hats to other people to convince them to elect me as the United Senator. Thank you.
Again, my name is Wayne Huffman. I am running for this position as a retired attorney, businessman. I have, to the extent that I practice law, was largely as a negotiator and in business transactions, and I guess it's sort of from that framework that I approach problems. My feeling is that one of the most important things is, and from a standpoint of liberty, is to make society simpler so that people actually understand what it is that is happening. I look at, I have contracts thrown at me every day on the computer, in the mail, and they are just undigestible. I've had met just about every type of financial license as well as a law license, and I find the contracts to be undigestible and certainly be undigestible by the average person. So my feeling is that we need to spend a lot of effort in simplifying government, and I believe that the reason government has gotten so complex is that it's basically one special interest that is thrown against the other, and each one is gaming the system. So what I would like to see is a congressional procedure whereby the parties are all brought in, and basically everybody, including experts in gaming the system, to tell how people are likely to do an end run around regulations and to try to make the regulations as realistic and as simple as possible. Thank you.
Well, I may not be an expert in every category, from the Constitution to all the bills pending before the Senate, but I'm pretty close. I know what I'm talking about. I researched the issues. I've had a lot of time to catch up on Games of Thrones, both seasons. I did that in a 48-hour marathon, so there's about 10 different plot lines, and if y'all need those explained, I can do that if they're happy on it. So we have critical issues facing us. The country is bankrupt, it operates without a budget for 4 years. All these things need to be fixed. These are massive issues. We have veterans waiting for 2 years to hear back on their benefits. Government doesn't work for veterans, it doesn't work for us. I go there to vote as a classic Harry Brown Libertarian. That's my inspiration, that all of his values and principles on government, all his beautiful sound bites. It's not a tribute campaign I'm running, but I was just thinking about his books and his works last night, and that's really where I came to the party, and those values are core to me. Minimal government, truly minimal government, that's not in your health care, that's not in your business, running your small business, that's not doing every possible thing to micromanage your life with Skynet, because that's really what they're building. The new Paycheck Fairness Act requires that all employers, that if it passes, would have to report all your wages, your ethnicity, your national origin, which is different from your ethnicity, your social security number, all to the government every year to be analyzed to see if it's equal. So we can all become this great androgynous utopia that the Democrats are wishing for. It's insanity. We have to stop that. They have no right to moralize to the rest of us when they can't balance the books. It's absurd to hear that. I can run an active campaign. I have money on the table today. I've already promised to line my mouth and to this debate to promise each of the delegates a yard sign and a sticker, and so I'll do that. And if I'm the nominee, and I'll make them colorful, and I'll make them pledge to the party and myself as best as possible.
I know a lot of you guys. I know, I mean, I look around the room and I see a lot of people that I know, and it's great to see. There are 4 people, though, who I've been working with the last week that make up the team that we have. It's going to be going to start out in Dallas, and that's Marcus, Kevin, Jordan, and Curry. And raise your hands. These guys are fantastic friends, and we're having a lot of fun doing this. And we're going to keep working. What we'd like to do is do what we're doing in Dallas and get a lot more of you guys from around the state in touch with these guys so we can send everybody as many yard signs as we need to have those distributed. So we want to start a snowballing effect. We want to get videos made, which we've already made professional commercials that can be shown on cable TV, which we had playing out in the lobby. We've done a lot of other things, and we plan on doing a lot of radio advertisements. We plan on being on the radio, plan on doing a lot of interviews. We plan on taking this on head on. And luckily, I have such great friends that are so involved in this and have dedicated themselves to this that we're really going to do something special this time. I also hope to make more friends with more of you guys so that we can do that around Texas. And the only way that we're going to succeed as a campaign, we have to understand this, is if we can get a message out there that's going to resonate with a lot of people who have not really been involved or are really disenfranchised with Republicans and Democrats. I think I can get that message out there well enough where those people go, wow, this guy's great. And if I can get that message to you, you guys share that message with your friends, if we can get that to snowball and get people all around the state to help us set up yard signs, etc., and get people out and involved, I think we can do this. I think we can make a heck of an impact, and we'll definitely spread a very libertarian message in the best light possible.
As many of you are probably aware, I've been spending a great deal of the last few years building bridges across the state with all kinds of civic groups, and in particular with the Tea Party movement. I'm well known to them, well regarded, frequently invited to speak to their rallies and events. And many of them, although they're now supporting Ted Cruz, have indicated that if Cruz is not the nominee, that they intend to vote for me. However, yesterday, at a meeting of the Austin chapter of the Federalist Society, a society of conservative and libertarian lawyers, where, of course, candidates always have a chance to introduce themselves, the vice chair of the Travis County Republican Party indicated that, in fact, said that if Ted Cruz is not the nominee, he intends to vote for me. And several other guys within earshot at that and neighboring tables nodded assent. And one of the speakers, it was a debate, was apparently a civil libertarian Democrat, also gave me a shout out indicating that he might vote for me. So the civil libertarian Democrats are in many ways dissatisfied with their slate of candidates. So we could have an opportunity this year to exceed single digits, perhaps by a significant amount. And I can't say that some of the support wouldn't rub off on another libertarian, but I'm a well-known factor in I'm already known to them.
Okay, thank you. I'd like the audience to just take one more moment and thank all 6 candidates for their something a little different. Myself and Michael Coyne are going to pass out these are the ballots for tonight only. I'm going to start on this row, and Michael's going to go down this row. I would ask that we're going to pass them out. Only take them if you are a delegate, please, again, on the honor system. You need to make 2 marks on your ballot. You can put both your marks next to one candidate, or you can put both your marks next to NODA. We're going to do this as quickly as possible once we have a final vote tally, and then pass them into the center. Michael will come up the center, I will come up the center, we'll collect them, quick count them here, and then we will proceed to have the final portion of the debate with just the two candidates.
Do they ask questions first?
Of the candidates? No.